Deep Dive 1. Prime Minister Modi speaks to Russian President Putin. Amid rising tariff, had a detailed conversation on several key issues. The two leaders spoke amid the global trade uncertainty put into motion by US President Donald Trump's tariff announcements over the purchase of Russian oil. In a post on social media, Prime Minister Modi posted that both the leaders reaffirmed their commitment to deepen India-Russia special and privileged strategic partnership and reviewed progress in the bilateral agenda. Prime Minister Narendra Modi then invited Russian President to visit later this year. And Putin will come to India. President Putin briefed Prime Minister Modi on the latest developments concerning Ukraine, and Prime Minister Modi repeated India's consistent position for peaceful resolution of the conflict. Global events seem to be moving fast after the US President Donald Trump's tariff across the world. President Trump has slapped India with 50% tariffs. Yesterday, Prime Minister Modi had responded for the first time. India would not compromise and declared that he prepared to bear a significant personal cost if necessary.
भारत अपने किसानों के, पशुपालकों के और मछुआरे भाई बहनों के हितों के साथ कभी भी समझौता नहीं करेगा। और मैं जानता हूं, व्यक्तिगत रूप से मुझे बहुत बड़ी कीमत चुकानी पड़ेगी, लेकिन मैं इसके लिए तैयार हूं।
For many in India and the United States of America, the consensus is that the latest escalation from the US is less about tariff and more about Donald Trump's ego. Trump has chosen to attack its own ally India. Trump has chosen to question India's independent foreign policy. So the question is, has India drawn the red line? Has India made it very clear to Donald Trump? Now, Washington has taken its brinkmanship against New Delhi to a dangerous level. And for India, this is both a challenge and opportunity on how to strengthen its traditional ties with its old ally Moscow, while continuing with its multi-aligned foreign policy and safeguards its national interest. Between yesterday and today, India has already shown its intent. There has been a conversation with the Brazilian President Lula, who is the only other country to be handed with 50% tariff and who has called for a joint response by BRICS. He spoke to Prime Minister Modi on bilateral trade to enhance strategic cooperation. Then PM Modi is also heading to China later this month for the first time in 7 years, and the Russian president is expected to visit India, as I mentioned earlier. Now, on this issue, I am joined by Ambassador Anil Tugnayat, Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, Pramit Pal Chaudhary, and Pathikrit Pain. Thank you all of you for joining me. My first question to Ambassador Tugnayat is, sir, have we drawn the line? And do you think that it is more than tariffs what we witnessed today?
Well, frankly, with Trump, you never know. And as far as India is concerned, and you also mentioned that we follow this policy of strategic autonomy with multi-alignments, which clearly means that we have several partners, we have friends, and we look after our own interests within the global context. President Trump comes from an alliance mindset, comes from a mindset which clearly indicates that he is looking for some kind of a surrogate partnership from India, that whatever he dictates, India will comply with. And that is not likely to happen, in my view, irrespective of the costs that India will bear. It is also a challenge. It is an opportunity, very much so. This is a time that we need to clearly understand what is it to work with the United States in the first place. It is not the first time that we are seeing what is happening out of the United States. It has repeatedly happened. And I think the more and more India grows in terms of his globalist stature, in terms of his economy, in terms of his comprehensive power, more and more such roadblocks will come. President Trump is just one of the few examples that you will see. But there is a deeper state that works in the United States in a very different way. So it is good that we are diversifying our relationships. It cannot be one at the expense of the other, as simple as that. And I think that India is, in my view, neither is banana republic, nor it is a country that can be just tamed by anyone out of his statements. I'm unable to understand what he is looking for, President Trump here. If he wants there is total irrationality as far as the oil concern is concerned. If you just look at it, for last 50, 40 years, who's buying the Russian oil and gas? It was not India. It's only just last 3 years that we started doing that. That too, when they pressured the Gulf countries to sell it to the Europeans. And so you got to find it from somewhere. And that's precisely what India has been doing to look after its own interests. At the same time, we are also buying from the United States the oil, which is increased by about 120%. So he is not interested in any facts. He is not also interested in any logical discussion. And therefore, he has now decided to call off the talks that are supposed to happen, as per if that is the correct information, because it was just said in the thing. So we don't know whether the 25th, 26th August talks are off. If they are off, then fine. I mean, this is how the world plays around, and we got to play the ball in the same way.
Let me go across to Pramit Pal Chaudhary, head South Asia, Eurasia Group. Pramit, in last 25 years, people had this idea that the Americans take relationship with India seriously, barring the nuke test which was done during the Vajpayee tenure when the Americans imposed sanctions on India. But there was a deep tech relationship. There was a relationship between aspirational Indian middle class, more than business. It had to do with education, it had to do with tourism, it had to do with aspirations, and also democracy. But right now, the impression which an average Indian has is that the American administration takes Indian relationship pretty cavalier, in a very cavalier way. For the example, 25 times Trump spoke about Operation Sindoor, and the way he imposed the taxes and the sort of words or the sentences he has used for the Indian government.
So, well, first keep in mind that it's not actually, our business relationship is actually quite phenomenal. India's largest source of FDI, FII, remittances, technology, and even its largest immigration point now is the United States. So it is actually deeply tied in with our economy on almost every front. It, in fact, dwarfs any other relationship we have. What we're seeing with Trump, I would argue, Trump is an unusual American president. He's an isolationist. He's a 19th century Republican who's suddenly come out of the history books and said America doesn't have to deal with anybody. He also has a very strange economic philosophy, we call mercantilism in the old days, which believes that trade tariffs and trade deficits matter. And therefore, I must try to resurrect American, especially manufacturing capacity, using tariffs, and use the unilateral power of America as the multilateral system no longer works or no longer works for American interests. The funny thing about what we're facing now is that at every other front, if you talk to any Indian official who works with an American official, and when the ministers meet, whether it's Hegseth meeting Rajnath Singh, Jaishankar meeting Rubio, Gabbard meeting Doval, the relationship is perfectly fine. In fact, it's moving very well. But only we run into this problem with Trump and his trade policy. So we have, weirdly, an America-US-India relationship that continues to do reasonably well, but has an obstacle in the form of the president himself and his very whimsical ideas of how foreign policy works. It is not India-specific. He is treating everybody like this. He's hit Switzerland, a totally innocuous country with 39% tariffs. He struck a deal with the Japanese, and if you look at the recent reports that have come out, he's actually added tariffs after the agreement and basically said, I'm going to add another 15, 20% tariff on a lot of products. So he does what he functions. The question is, how do we manage Trump in a manner that allows us to maintain a US relationship that is now inherently important to the rise of India? And that's going to be the big challenge we're going to see over the time being. I don't see Russian oil as being particularly important. We only save $1 billion a year from that. It's a sovereignty issue, but it is not an economically important issue. But what we do know is that until July, the trade negotiations with America were going so well, we had expected Trump to announce their conclusion on August 1st. Something went haywire in between. And what we're getting is that it's mainly about agriculture, and particularly for crops related to his MAGA farm base and soya and dairy being at the heart of it. And these are the rocks on which it is founded. Trump has now acted in exactly the way he always does with every other country. He's ratcheted up pressure, become abusive, and will attempt to do so.
Pramit, you spoke about agriculture. Let me play out some data for you. I want your comments on that. Let me play out that data for you. I was doing the research. The average agricultural holding in India of a farmer is roughly around 4 acres, and I'll play that data. The average agricultural holding of a farmer in the United States of America is somewhere around 443 or 444 acres. The bigger farmers have more than that. And plus, the entire thing is not about the farm producers. It's actually about the food processing industry. So if you look at this, the graphics I'm playing, it is actually telling us the share of the farms and the share of the production. Then I'm going to show you the data also. The Indian support to farmers in terms of export is lesser than what the American government does for its own agricultural export business. So it is more about the agri-business and less about agriculture. But for us, it's more about agriculture because the 40% of the Indian people depend on it.
Look, this is all very well known. I'm not saying anything that anybody doesn't know. The point is, it does not matter to President Trump. He doesn't care about what the rest of the world's problems are. His view is, I have a base in America of about 35-40% of my voters who vote for me. In fact, India conceded almonds, apples, berries, ethanol, all sorts of various other agricultural products. And what I heard is his negotiators are those who come from Democratic states, California, Washington. It does not help our base, the middle American farmer. He grows soya, corn, wheat, dairy. You're not giving us anything in that. But those are the crops that are most sensitive to India. And it's really boiled down to really soya and dairy. I actually don't think dairy is a problem. If you've seen the head of Amul has come out publicly and said, we can compete against America. Our milk is cheaper than the United States. And if it were to come and be shipped from US to India, it would be simply too expensive. If anything, Amul can export to the United States. But it really comes down to the soy issue. But to put up all these statistics is all very fine. It is totally irrelevant as far as President Trump is concerned.
General Kulkarni, so is it boiling down to Trump's ego? Sort of a lack of a phone call from Prime Minister Modi after Operation Sindoor? Is it just boiling down to that?
Thank you very much. I think a largely emotional, impulsive president, typical of business-minded. It's my way or highway. I look at it this way and you must follow me. And in that context, I think, yes, you can say to some extent, because as most people now seem to be thinking 25 times, some say 31 times, whatever the times it may be. Well, definitely the Americans were approached by the Pakistanis, and the Americans have helped Pakistan to get out of a very, very tricky situation when they were almost knees down, and they knew that it was now getting very difficult for them. And therefore, the Pakistanis are grateful to him. So he probably feels that the Pakistanis are grateful to him, and now Pakistanis have become what I always call in the Umrah Jan of America. In that context, it's extremely difficult now for, he feels if Pakistan could do at least an acknowledgement of the fact that he helped. Well, it doesn't seem to. It doesn't come that way because it was all bilateral. It was their DGMO. Much that the Vice President may have spoken to the Prime Minister, which Prime Minister himself admitted, but not him. The administration, yes, the administration and the Vice President have been talking, and he was clearly told that if Pakistan does what it is doing, it would get back and be paid much heavier. So in that context, yes, but definitely one thing is very, very clear, as he himself said, well, I got these two countries because of trade, and that is how they would agree to. Well, it doesn't seem to, because 25% first, followed another 25%, 50%, and he seems to be annoyed with India being part of BRICS because you see Brazil 50%, the other two countries, of course, is absolutely annoyed, China and Russia. So you find out of BRICS, out of 5, 4 are at the receiving end from him. And at this point of time, I think he probably might be wanting to push India as far as he can, thinking that the Indians do feel uneasy with China, and therefore, why not now? And the deep state in America is probably pushing him hard that they have realized.
I really don't know, General Kulkarni, it's only about tariff or pushing India. We were discussing, has India drawn the red line? Today the Prime Minister had a long conversation with President Putin. Yesterday he had a conversation with Lula from Brazil. Pathikrit, to you, do you think that, is it just about tariffs or more than tariffs? Many editorials were written from one newspaper to other, where a lot of authors and the experts of foreign policy said that it really impinges on the independence of India's foreign policy. It's not about tariffs.
Karthik, a couple of things. Number one, there's a method in the madness. You're absolutely right that it's not perhaps about tariff. Look at this. I consider it's almost like the way the Americans treated the Japanese in the 1980s. I mean, the Americans have great relation with India. There are many areas of convergence. We have a natural alignment of culture. We are comfortable with the Americans. But yes, the Americans want you to be contained at a $6 to $7 trillion economy. They are not very happy with you aspiring to be a $30 trillion economy in the next, say, 25 years. So there is a saying in many of the think tanks in the West that China is today's problem, India is the problem for tomorrow. So it is that they have a problem with your strategic sovereignty. They have a problem with your strategic autonomy. They have a problem with your foreign policy. It actually boils down to that. And secondly, of course, if you look at the larger trajectory, he is targeting all the 4 members of BRICS, because somewhere there is this realization that, this entire, we may not have a common currency today or BRICS currency, but the bigger problem that Trump or probably the deeper state believes is this, that BRICS is becoming something which is inspiring many countries of the global south. It may not have a currency right now, but a lot of countries are, exploring the concept of having other currencies or diversifying from dollar. It's not about dumping the dollar. Secondly, if you look at the kind of excitement of the voice of global south creates, I mean, the world was always binary. Either you are with the US or against US. Here is a country like India coming and saying that, look, I am neither this side or that side. I am the part of the global south, and I am the Pied Piper of the global south. And you had 125 countries joining the voice of global south and saying that we want multilateral institutions to be reformed. We do not want dollar to be weaponized. We do not want sanctions to happen. We do not want our foreign exchange reserves to be frozen because of sanctions. And we do want the multilateral institutions to think for us as well. So this is where the whole thing boils down. I think the tariff, the whole issue of Russian oil are probably mostly the pretext. There is absolutely no doubt that the American, there's a lobby, the farm lobby actually wants to enter the agriculture sector, and there's a massive push. I mean, there has been a lot of money the farm lobby may have put for his elections, the Trump's election. But I think it is not just about that. And it's not that only Trump is doing it. During the Biden administration, just look at the number of times efforts being made for anarchy-like situation. We are aware how much money was pumped in from abroad for the anti-farm law protest. We are aware the kind of money that was pumped in for the anti-CAA riots. We are aware of the kind of a narrative of intolerance and fascism that has been consistently attempted to be created. I mean, look at this. My last point, Karthike. Here is a terror attack which happens in Pahalgam, and then America goes and hit the terror camps. The country which so-called champions the war on terror should have come and said, "Bravo, India, we are with you." And what does the Americans do? They are actually quoting the Pakistanis, the field marshal, as if Pakistan is the last hope for United States. And on the contrary, instead of giving credit to India for whatever military proficiency it has shown, they want to snatch away the credit by saying, oh, it was us who did the ceasefire, as if India had no role to play. So let's look at it this way. They would want to continue. Today it's Trump. Yesterday it was Biden and the Obamas. Tomorrow it will be somebody else. And you have to deal with it. It is not that the whole world will be happy as you move away towards a $10 trillion economy.
You also use the word deal with it. Pramit also said that, when I was taking out the graphic doesn't matter to Trump. So my question is, if these issues which are close to us doesn't matter to Trump, Ambassador Tugnayat, then what matters to Trump in context of resolution of a vexed issue?
Well, as far as Trump is concerned, and whatever I can gather, is that in this whole situation, he has been personally miffed by India's stance. So everything as with regard to the ceasefire, as you know, we did not allow him to take the credit that he has repeated 34 times. So he has made it very, very personal. Apart from what I said earlier, Patikrita said that there is a long-term design of the deep state to not let
And
you
if I
become.
recall, Prime Minister refused to go to America. And then in a rally, in a function, a sort of a cultural function, he said that how could I have not come here? I think he went to Odisha. There was a big cultural function. And
That's
he
true.
spoke
I mean,
about it.
you just don't go there. Because just because this man calls you. But the problem with him is that he's so unpredictable. I mean, I used to always believe that there is a method in his madness, but this time he has got the administration with him, which speaks the same language as he does. In the previous term, he had some of these old guard who were trying to put things in a different way. So today there are no brakes on him of any kind. So whatever he thinks, it gets implemented. Now he treats the friends, enemies, and frenemies alike. For him, it doesn't make any difference irrespective of who you are. He's not looking for those kind of friends. He's looking for supplicants. He's having this neo-colonizing mindset, frankly, that if you're not with me, but he respects the strong people. We have seen with Putin. Now he's going to meet him next week. He's going to meet China at the APEC summit. So he deals with that now, but he
Okay.
considers India possibly that, okay, it's a guy, we can hit him because he's democracy.
Okay.
But that's not going to happen.
Okay. Pramit, then what is your assessment? Where do you think this conversation, this engagement is going to go? In short term and in long term?
So the positive scenario would be, and I cited the previous pattern of Trump's negotiations, is he tends to ratchet up pressure. If you read his book, The Art of the Deal, he's quite clear about this. He said that you have to have leverage on the other person you're negotiating with, and then you push and push until you come to a deal, and then you should be very nice to that person so that they basically feel good about it. And that's where I think we're going to be going right now. Over the next 2 to 3 weeks, I expect things to get worse. I expect the language to get worse. Definitely the tariffs will kick in. The first half of the tariffs have kicked in. The second one will probably kick in because we won't have time to negotiate a deal between the 25th and 27th. That's assuming that we even have negotiations. And then that will probably run on until September. The game then was we'll have to see what is acceptable at the negotiating table. He is completely focused. I don't think he has any he has genuinely no strategic interest in the rest of the world, other than Greenland and Canada. He doesn't have any sense of who's up or down. He doesn't really care. He is only concerned about the 40% of the population in America that voted for him. And he has a midterm elections coming up next November. He has to hold on to both houses of the Congress, because if the Democrats win either of them, they'll launch criminal investigations on pretty much on dozens of them against his family, which is extremely corrupt. So therefore, that's his entire end game. So the hope is that they come to an understanding that is acceptable to him. Soya is particularly important. As I said, it's crucial to his farmers. Most importantly, they have lost their biggest market, export market, which is China, which has blocked all soya exports from the United States as part of its own negotiating tactics. Who has taken that market? Brazil. So unsurprisingly, he has sanctioned Brazil, and now he's trying to force the Indian market open, the other one that's big enough to absorb even a fraction of the soya that he now has to get rid of. Then the harvest is in September. So this is the deadline I think we're looking at internally. The Russian oil, I think, is an eyewash. It doesn't really matter. There's a huge surplus of oil in the international system, and it's financially not that important to India either. But fundamentally, that's part of the pressure tactic. So if it's a positive scenario, we will see things get worse for some more weeks, and then we'll come to a sudden agreement on the negotiations on the trade side that is acceptable to both. If, however, and this is correctly, others have said that there's now a personal edge to this, that goes back to Operation Sindoor, but also by the fact that Modi has deliberately, probably sensibly refused to take any phone calls from him in the past 3 weeks, from Trump, that is, that we may see the negotiations not only fail, but be exacerbated by the falling out between the two world leaders, in which case we will face a much reduced GDP growth rate, probably about 1 to maybe 1.5%, and we'll have to absorb that.
Okay, and a very quick closing comment from General Kulkarni. Though Reuters filed this report denied by the government of India through sources about the defense issues, do you feel that in US-India defense partnership can be affected?
No, that won't be affected and will not be affected and should not be affected. I think basically all false. I don't think we should believe in it.
No, the government has denied it. I've already said. Reuters filed a big banner story. The government denied it after a couple of hours. But the fact is that it's still, the wire still sticks to the story.
No question, because you know the kind of adversaries we have, irrespective of whatever happens with China, with whatever goes on in Pakistan, with Pakistan not being what it is, we have to be ready, and all javelins, fighters, and all aircraft, all of it have to come in. There is no denying the fact. Atmanirbharta, yes, but till then, we have to be fully prepared. No question of wanting to.
Okay, so you're saying the deal, so we will have a relationship when it comes to the defense sector. Thank you all of you for joining me. So this was our deep dive one, which was about how Prime Minister has drawn the line. A lot of experts feel that the pressure which the Trump is exerting on us will last for some time because that's what he is. He wants to have a leverage with India. But there are a lot of experts who feel that, well, that's not the case. It is about the strategic autonomy of India. It's about the sovereignty, and India's response must be there clear without antagonizing Trump, but it must be firm.